Hello, everyone. I would like to use the 40 minutes or so that we have to tease your curiosity about listening. Because in 40 minutes, it will not be enough time to cover even the fundamentals. So I'm going to choose some teasers. And I'm going to start with claiming that listening is like nuclear energy. If you know how to cultivate it, you can unleash human connectivity and benefits to a magnitude unimaginable with any other intervention. You mentioned feedback, for example. Feedback has no chance of creating what listening can do. And for me, feedback is about telling someone something about their behavior. Well, listening is, instead of telling, is listening. Second, like nuclear energy, it has negative side effects. It could be costly for the listener, and the listeners may have many reasons not to engage in listening. And understanding it will be important to learn to unleash the power of listening. And finally, like nuclear energy, learning to use it will take years. And have no illusions that anyone will come out from this talk and will start listening differently. But perhaps some of you will have the seed in their mind that they want to go to the gym of listening and starting practicing, because it takes effort, it takes practice, and then I will share with you the many things that it creates. I want to start with personal observations about the power of listening. More than a decade ago, when a little bit after I got interested in it, I created a seminar, MBA seminar that was year-long, meeting every week for 90 minutes. And every week, we will practice another listening exercise. And as the semesters went on, people became more intimate and more safe with each other. And in the beginning of the second semester, one day, one of the students interrupted the meeting and said, I want to share with you something. I want to share with you that I overcame anorexia. Before she was done, a second student jumped in and said, BS, no way. Nobody is going to get recovered from eating disorder. I know damn well. I know from my brother who has eating disorders, the brother who raped me. Then a third student, after a shock, was saying to me, I'm sorry. This is not what I signed in for going to a business school. This is not part of my contract. I'm not supposed to be exposed to these things in school. I took a deep breath, somehow dismissed the class, and went and consulted a friend of mine who volunteered in her early days in a rape crisis center. And later on invited the first two students to my office to make sure they can sit in the same classroom the following week. The first one said, I have no issues, it's hers. The second one I realized was not treated for her trauma. And I cajoled her to start getting free therapy from one of the municipalities in Israel, which she did. And she gave me a permission a few weeks ago to speak about her openly with the idea that it may serve other people. She was saying, it changed my life, it saved my life. The fact that there were people to listen to me and to start listening to myself. Then, towards the end of the semester, the third student turned to class and said, well, many of you have listened to me on a one-to-one basis, and I want to share with all of you that I confided in some of you with the question of whether or not I should leave my boyfriend. I want to tell you, I did leave my boyfriend. I found a girlfriend and I'm happy now. What I'm sharing with you is how listening did dramatic change for 3 people out of the 20 or so that were in the course. None could forget what happened in this meeting. But I also want to share with you that the following week to the revelation about the rape, I came to class and I said, well, today we're not going to do exercises. Today we're going to speak from here about the principles that Carl Rogers have observed some 70 years ago and get some cognitive anchoring to our experiences. I want to give you one more example of how powerful listening could be. About 6 weeks ago, I met a woman in Israel who is organizing activities to make the public aware of the power of listening. And she was consulting me about what presentation she should give to a group of North American women that she's about to meet on Zoom, North American business women. And I don't remember how I started talking about it, but at a certain point, I said, well, I think we should listen not only to the victims, but also to the perpetrators. And she says, wow, I can't believe you're saying that. Let me tell you a story. About not long ago, I gave a talk to a large group of people, and I said to them, you know, 1 out of 7 people in this audience have gone through, was involved in sexual misconduct, either as a victim or a perpetrator. 1 out of 7. And she said during the break, a man came up to her and said to her, okay, you can call the police to put the cuffs on me. And she said, no, let me think about it. I will meet you in 30 minutes when I regain my composure. She did. And then she told him, okay, your job will be to go to listen to other people that have done things like you have done and maybe are still doing. And she told me that she heard through the grapevine that this is exactly what this man does. So I told her, oh, so you know damn well what to tell to the ladies that you're about to talk to soon. And then I said, what is it that I'm giving you advice what to do? What about myself? And then I shared with her that I never brought up with a friend of 45 years that when we were young, over 40 years ago, he tried to rape me. And I need to talk to him. So about a month ago, I went to his place and I told him, I need you only to listen. And before I say anything, you should know that I do love you. And whatever you'll say, I will remain your friend. But hear the following. I want us to go back to the sexual encounter we had. I want you to tell me what you remember. I want you to listen to what I have gone through. And then I want us to work out how we continue here as friends, continue from here as friends. And he listened. After he heard me, he said, "Oh my God, I knew I did bad things. I didn't think the thing with you was one of them." And then he said, "I'm sorry." Then he said that he's glad that I've shared this and I brought it up. And just before I left his place, I said, "I'm glad we've done it, but I still cannot forgive. We need to continue this conversation." And I went to the street, and metaphorically, I patted myself on the shoulder and said to myself, "Good boy. You listened to your heart. You didn't offer an apology that was not felt. You will wait for the right time." And before, I'm talking to you right now from Chicago, before I went to the US tour, I asked his permission to share this story. And he said, "Yes, you can." So this is my little personal demonstration that if you listen and ask to be listened to with some, look, and it takes time to cultivate, a lot of hurts may come out and may find way for resolution. So what I'd like to do in the remainder of the time, I would like to invite you to innocuous exercise, nothing of the level of the thing that I was sharing. Because what I learned about training people in listening, that you start with the fun, very easy thing. And the thing that is very easy for people to do is to listen to stories. So I'd like in the next 7 minutes to divide you to breakout rooms. And within those breakout rooms for 6 minutes, you'll spend time with each other. The first 3, one of you will ask the other one, "Could you please tell me an interesting story about?" And you can choose whatever you want to put after the about. "Could you please tell me an interesting story about?" And the about could be about the history of your family. It could be about an event that happened to you while you were engaged with your hobby. Or could you tell me an interesting story about a shoe? Or could you tell me an interesting story about a tradition in your family? Choose any one that you want, and you'll ask for a story, and you would listen for 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, I will give you a signal that this is time to switch, and you'll switch to the other side. The other side will ask, "Could you please tell me an interesting story about?" And it doesn't have to be about the same thing. So let me create the breakout rooms, and let's see what happens. Let's create 8. If anyone finds themselves alone, I will join you and come back to the plenary. Yeah, I see that there may be, okay, this way everyone will have exactly, okay. Okay, you'll be moved to your assigned rooms now. Brendan, are you with me?
Yes, looks like everybody's there's two to every room there. So
do you want to do this exercise, although it's being recorded?
sure. Oh no.
Oh, somebody else is joining. Can you
Yeah,
join?
somebody just came in.
Okay, Ido.
Hi, yeah, I'm sorry. I just returned from one of my lectures, so I was a bit embarrassed, but I missed the first like 10 to 12 minutes of the of the lecture.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I could go to the breakout room. I heard your instructions, but I had to fix my my audio device. So
How about you stay here and you share with us? You're being recorded, Ido. So
yeah, sure.
Could you tell us an interesting story about a shoe?
Oh, wow. Hi. Well, that's a hard one. You picked the hardest. I can go with the family traditions one. It's easier.
Okay, go ahead with the family tradition. Tell us a story about the family tradition.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Right. So once a year, right before Passover, all of my grandmother, my grandfather, and all of their sons and grandsons, daughters and granddaughters, we are joining together at my grandmother's. May she rest in peace. Now she just passed away like last year, and we put some semolina, like wheat crumbled, together with some dates and some oil, together in a very big bowl. And then we take the keys from the doors of our house, and then we mix everything together. It's called bshisha, the tradition, and we do it every year. And it's supposed to represent some like opening the door for better luck to the year right before Passover, which is like the Jewish, the Torah beginning of the year, like traditionally.
So if you don't mind me asking, is that you say that's something your family does, but is it done larger than that? Is it a cultural thing? Is it a norm?
It's no, it's like it's a norm of a very specific immigrants from a very specific part of an island called Jerba. I think it's an island. I think I don't know if it's within Tunisia or close to Tunisia. Like I know it's under Tunisia jurisdiction, but I don't know where it is.
That's fascinating. I love that.
That's a weird one.
No, that's very cool though. I mean, you know, nothing. I mean, not like anything I've ever. I'm boring. So
how about you go now? We have a couple minutes to go. Brendan, maybe you can tell us an interesting story.
Oh man, okay. So I have to be honest with you. I am not a big tradition person by any means. I have and hopefully this has come off negative, but I have a little bit of philosophy or a feeling that when we get too bogged down with things like traditions, it's a hindrance for progress at times, that we're looking too much towards now.
So tell us a story about progress.
Oh boy. Well, okay. I will maybe use the only tradition that, you know, and it's nothing like, you know, keys and dates and similar. But one of the few things that are near and dear to my heart, and I'm a Christmas fanatic. You know, I'm the person on the street that puts up, you know, 50,000 lights in my home. And but there's only one item that in my family that I have ever cared about, and it is a tree stand. And this tree stand, most of my family is from Ireland and Britain, but my name is from Alsace-Lorraine, so it's kind of a back and forth translation of French and German. But from when my family was in Germany, they built this tree stand. And for a couple hundred years prior to electricity, it used to just house candles. And the thought of these candles flickering flames up towards a tree, a real tree, it's just like, fire hazard. Your house would burn down type thing. But they used this year after year after year for a couple of centuries. And in terms of progress, they took this tradition, and over years they adapted and manipulated and evolved this tree stand. And then they built like metal structures, or a metal cylinder around it as that became available, and riveted it into place. And finally, along the lines, then finally, in the 1900s, they wired it with electricity, and now we screw bulbs into it. And so this stand looks nothing. My relatives from 250, 300 years ago would not know that this is the same stand. But this one stand has maintained through our family, through the German lineage, through all that time. And, I told my parents that, look, I don't want your money. I don't want your house. I don't want anything. I want that stand. And thankfully, they gave it to me long before, anybody, they passed away or anything along those lines. That, like, we want to make sure that that is yours because you're the only one who's ever cared about it. So it is a little bit of a tradition because I know where it came from, and I care about where it came from because it speaks to the family. And we've seen that evolution of how it evolved over a few hundred years.
Thank you so much for sharing, both of you.
Yeah, thank you. It was quite funny as well.
Okay, we'll wait for everyone to come back.
I think we are all here.
Okay, great. So in a paper in 2016, we have shown that just by asking people to tell a story, you make yourself a better listener, as perceived by the listener, the speaker, and a reduction in their social anxiety. So I hope that you all had fun, and you could see like how that you heard unexpected, amazing things when you just get to probe a person in a different way. So let me now spend like a few minutes, like more formally, more scientifically, about what the little things that I'm learning about listening, and I'm going to share my screen. And next, put not this one, but the presentation, which is right here. And okay, this is a blueprint for a 3-hour talk, so there is no chance that I'm gonna talk about it. But so this is my presentation, and let me start with the definition. There are no good agreed upon definition of what is listening in the field. And I think the reason for that is the complexity that it involves two people. So you can think about what the listener does, what an observer can see, such as gaze or leaning forward, and what the speaker experiences. What Selin has been studying, like something like feeling understood. And all of them are important, but I would suggest that the driver of many outcomes in life, including in business, is stemming from the speaker's perception. It doesn't matter if you're a salesperson and you think that you're a good salesperson, you're a good listener. What matters is how well the customer perceive you to listen, because this perception of listening is going to drive all the downstream variables or effects. And it's true for listening by a supervisor, by a physician, etc. Nevertheless, I want to suggest that people know what they expect listener to do. And I'm offering here a definition that I'm still working on for years, but this is the working definition I'm using. You know when you're being listened to, when you feel that the other person is paying total attention to you, when the other person seems to be understanding of what you're saying, that is, they're laughing in the right moment, or they're frowning in the right moment, or they're asking you a question that shows that they really got what you said before. But perhaps most important is, do they judge that you are on their side? And I want to say more things about what I understand by being on your side. Carl Rogers suggested it's giving an empathic and non-judgmental attitude. I want to add on it that being on your side may include challenging you with difficult questions that I believe will help you, and that eventually also help you. So, for example, I was listening to Brandon just like a few minutes ago, and when he was telling, well, I don't have this type of a story, I told him, how about you telling this story? And that prompted him to tell a story that is a connection between my original question and the other question, which was in the end fun for me, and I presume it was fun for Brandon to share and useful. So being on your side doesn't mean just if you come to me and you complain, I'm saying, yeah, I agree with you, there are bad people. This is not necessarily helping you. Being on your side is really helping you cope better. So this is how I understand it. For the sake of time, I will just say that this is not listening when you're saying, I'm listening to you, but you're holding your smartphone. And you can do the same with the old technology. Just pretend to listen or have enough attention span to coordinate time for dinner, but not really to understand the person. And when you jump and say, I know what you mean, you're probably saying, it's my turn to talk. And when you say that, but I've told you 1,000 times, it's a sign that 999 times after people did not oblige to what you're asking them to do, you fail to find out why, and you're gonna keep talking instead of listening. And when you give advice when no one asks for it, you're not listening. And when you feel like that inside, you cannot listen, and the speaker knows it as well. You have to calm yourself down first. It takes a lot of calmness to be able to understand and to invite new material to a conversation. I'm going to say briefly that practitioners in many fields claim that listening has amazing effects. Stephen Covey in the Highly Effective People book found out that one habit of highly effective people is seek to understand before you seek to be understood. In the realm of marriages, Harville Hendricks saying, if you want to overcome the Cold War that many marriages are destined to become, you'll have to learn to listen to your spouse. It's only very difficult because what my wife wants to tell me about me, it's exactly the last thing in the world that I want to hear about and to cope with, although this could be the key to improve the quality of my life. And anyone who ever asked a kid, how was your day in school? And they got the elaborated answer, cool, fine, is invited to read this book that is supported by experimental research coming out of Canada. And in the field of organizational development, Edgar Schein, when he was 83 years old, is writing a book, Humble Inquiry, the gentle art of asking instead of telling. And a psychiatrist, Jonathan Shea, is asking what happened to American soldiers in Vietnam and how to help them. And in terms of mental disability. And he said the only chance to help them is just to ask them, so what is your story? What happened to you? Not a label, not judgment. And then in field of negotiation, coming out of Harvard, the difficult conversation book, saying if you want to be a good negotiator, you'll need to learn to become a listening leader. And also in the field of negotiation, in never split the difference, Chris was saying that if you want to spare the lives of hostages, you'll need to learn to listen to the kidnappers. And even listen to what they're not saying to save everybody's life. And in the field of medicine, Daniel Offrey is saying that most doctors do just the checklist of what the hospital asked them to do, and they are failing to listen to the patient and therefore to heal them. And Leanna Wen, who lost her mother to medical malpractice, is warning families and patients that doctors don't listen and can cost you your life. And only in 2022, I know 2 good books about listening, just for the general audience, that you're not listening and how to listen, one from the USA, one from Australia. So practitioners are knowing them well that listening is important. I'm going to skip the theories that are talking about listening. And I want to show you some data. I did a series of meta-analyses, so linking associations of listening with everything I can find. And I put them into buckets of listening and quality of speech, listening and quality of relationship, listening and cognition, well-being, performance, and 2 predictors of listening. Is it affected by the environment or by personality or gender or any demographic variables? And I made all the correlations, turned them to be to the positive side. So for example, if it was listening and depression, I switched the minus sign to a plus, so it would be listening and well-being. The median correlation in social psychology is 0.21 over 100 years of research. And in applied psychology, correlation above 0.26 are in the top third of published correlations in applied psychology. So look at these results. Good listeners affect the quality of speech of the speaker. They reduce disfluencies, like I said before, and you, you know, things like that, and make stories more interesting. Listening is also related to relationship quality, such as trust. Listening affects cognition of the speaker. In my own laboratory research, we have shown that if you want to change the opinion of one person, the best way to do it is to just listen to them. They will come with the counter argument from their own, and as a result, will have a more complex and more moderate attitude. Listening also affects well-being. It may appear as weak, like about 0.24, but or 0.25, but notice that the best drug for depression is correlated with, experimentally, with depression at 0.19, or reducing depression. And then listening is related to performance on the job, and the stronger predictor of listening is environmental factors such as distraction in the environment. Also in our laboratory, we create listening manipulated by distraction with flickering screens or with text messages to smartphones to prevent good listening, just imitating normal day-to-day life that ruin listening. And personality may be related to, it's probably related to perceived quality of listening. Females listen better than males. The average correlation by chance is also 0.15. I thought it was pretty interesting. I sent it to applied psychology, to American psychologists. And they said, no, this is not not enough theory here. And then I sent it to Psychological Bulletin saying, no way, you need to do 3-way meta-analysis. So then I decided this message must go out to the world, and I will break it down to components, and I will start with listening and job outcomes. And I sent it to the Journal of Business of Psychology because this is the only one that will, in my field, that will accept hybrid registered meta-analysis. For example, Nature and Human Behavior will accept hybrid registration, but not for meta-analysis. So this is got accepted when what I'm showing you now for conclusion are the interim results. I've coded about half the data. The simple theory we put forward is listening improve relationship, improve mood, affect, and improve knowledge and cognition. And therefore it mediates that all these are mediators of performance. But the actual meta-analysis are like on the bottom here, that if the theory is correct, then the effect on performance should be weaker than on any other putative mediator. So this is a forest plot of all the effect on relationship. You don't need statistics to understand that there is positive relationship between listening and relationship and cognition and affect and performance. And let me show you it numerically, briefly. Let me see, I have 2 minutes to go. So, so far we coded 76 papers with 95 independent samples, with 430 effect sizes, correlation between listening and any job outcome. The average correlation is 0.41. The corrected correlation for unreliability is 0.44. Obviously, there is very large heterogeneity, and there is a little evidence for outlier bias. There is no evidence for publication bias, but there is an opposite bias here, that large studies tend to create large effect size. And that, I think, is taken from the fact that studies we took from medicine have huge samples of thousands of people, and they tend to have poor psychometric values. I'm still working on it. But what's interesting here, let's break it down to performance versus the other predictors. So the effect of listening on quality of relationship is 0.52, and correctness is 0.56, to a degree that I'm worried that listening is just a facet of relationship. It's so high. It's also related to cognition and affect, and each of them is either significantly or almost significantly higher, the effects here, than the 0.35. Another test, and the last one I'm going to show you, the 0.35 looks to me too good to be true. Really? Just listening is predicting actual performance so highly? So one of the moderators we coded for is whether the data is a monosource data or different source data. So I'm looking separately at 11 studies that had, say, a customer report how well the person listened, and the company reports how much the person sell, or the patient reports how well the doctor listens, and the hospital reports the likelihood that the person will return to the hospital, to the emergency room within 30 days. Here I get a correlation of 0.21, which I think is more believable for me, and we'll see exactly whether it is less evidence for bias. And this is what I wanted to share with you, that listening may have really strong power to affect many things. First, quality of relationship. Quality of relationship probably helps later on people form attitudes that are more complex and less dangerous, and form more knowledge, and as consequently perform better on the job. This is what I had to say. My time is up, but I'm still here to answer any question that anyone wants to ask right now.
Perhaps we can take 4 or 5 more minutes if anyone has any questions.
With pleasure.
Thank you. Yes, Robert, please.
Hello, I've enjoyed learning about the listening, and I have a quick question. You'd mentioned earlier, early on in the talk, and I was curious: is there data that shows that people on the listening side of a conversation overestimate or underestimate their perceived listening as compared to what the other party says? So when we both evaluate my listening, does the listener tend to overestimate how good of a listener there was?
There is egocentric bias in the means, but there are good correlations between self-report and other report. For example, a paper that is in press now, I had 200 couples report how they listen, and their partner also report,
Okay.
and the correlations are above 0.5.
Okay. And they do some accurate meta-accuracy assessments, and that's this is
there is some meta-accuracy. I did a study with social relations modeling, so people have some clue.
Okay.
They're not perfect. They have egocentric bias. Nevertheless, they have some clue.
Okay. But it does skew slightly that people overestimate.
Yes.
Okay. But not massively, slightly. Okay.
But I think that most people don't know what type of listening I'm talking about. I'll give you just one example. In my listening classes towards the end of the year, I tell them, okay, now one of you gonna talk and the other one only listen for 40 minutes, and then you switch sides. And people say, oh my God, we can't do it. After I tell them the 40 minutes are up and it's time to switch, they're saying, really? And see, people never had this experience in their entire life, even if they go to psychologists or psychiatrists. And it's profound experience. So there is an issue of calibration of the measurement, and I don't know what to do about it.
Jana or Jana, is that?
Yeah, Jana, thank you. I was really intrigued. The data you presented is from the perspective of the listener and his or her own performance outcomes. What about others, like second parties, like leader perceptions of the listening capability of leaders, for example? Do you have data looking at the effectiveness of leadership or perceived leadership effectiveness as a function of subordinates' perceptions?
I skipped very quickly one of the sub-meta-analyses that I've done, and I found that subordinates reporting the supervisor leadership and supervisor listening, the two are correlated uncorrected about 0.7. And I'm doing another psychometric paper. It's going to be submitted soon. I'm not sure that all the measures of relationship at work, like subordinates rating their supervisor and listening, humility, trust, empathy, feeling understood, and on the other side, incivility, controlling. They seem to form 3 clusters of variables, or even 2 of just positive behavior, negative behaviors, and maybe positive outcomes. The correlations are so high, and there is serious threat to divergent validity. So theoretical work needs to be done to separate when people report about. I'm sure that listening is not the same as trust, and listening is not the same as humility, because else we would not have words for them in language. But I don't know that we know to measure them and to specify exactly what is unique about it. So I'm saying one of the weaknesses of everything I presented to you, you would say, is it listening or is it just good relationship? But I would add that probably listening could create the positive relationship. And I don't know how you build trust. I know how to teach listening.
Okay, thank you.
Lim, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Avi, for your presentation on this highly interesting topic. I have recently been looking for studies that have looked at the impact of listening on negotiation results, and in the field of conflict resolution. And there's a lot of anecdotal evidence and a lot of people talking about the importance, and I would as well, of listening in those arenas. But have you yourself or come across recent studies that have looked at this?
I don't know of experimental work, just theoretical work. My former student Guy Itzhakov wrote 2 chapters about negotiation and listening.
Mm-hmm. In where would I find it?
Drop me a line and I'll send you the chapters.
Thank you.
And, but experimentally, we have shown again and again that listening make attitudes more complex.
Mm-hmm.
So this is and you'll find this in PSPB, 2 different papers in 2017 in personality.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. I'll drop you a line.
Thank you.
Alex, please.
Hi, thanks so much. I really enjoyed your conversation and presentation. I'm also very interested in listening. I also teach negotiation to students and often try to emphasize and teach them how to become better listeners. I see that as a big part of what they're trying to do. But I only have a semester, and I'm curious if you have any other tools that you recommend for practicing listening or helping people to become better listeners relatively, quickly, when there isn't as much time, or when there's maybe a weekend workshop, or.
I'm afraid not. I will share with you that I observe that it's not any particular exercise. I think it's the repetition. When I'm teaching a full semester on listening, most students only by the 6th, 7th, or 8th class start to get it, that they have a habitual shortcoming in their own listening. And so I have some tools. One of them is called the feed-forward interview. I can share the paper from 2010. I'm still working on testing it experimentally. I have other tools like that I call What is Your Story? I recommend in the UK that you find out about clean language. You find YouTube instructions how to use clean language. I would recommend Bubbles, coming out of Switzerland, a method of intervening in organization by teaching people how to ask very effective questions. But I'm afraid there is no quick fix. For more than 10 years, we failed to manipulate good listening in the lab with whatever instructions we use. Creating bad listening is very easy, but improving it above baseline probably takes a lot of effort on the trainer as well. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
No, but I do appreciate, and I'll certainly look into some of these things that you mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Alex, and everyone. Maybe we have time for one very quick question. We want to wrap it up soon. Ido, please.
I'm afraid it won't be as quick, so maybe I'll do it by email or something. I don't want to waste everybody's time.
So
thank you.
Maybe you just say what it is so people are aware of what you're asking.
Yeah, all right. So I'm working on a project, never mind the details, but I'm not the listening guy in the project. There is another researcher who is more fluent in this research area. And we're doing the study on listening in groups. And I have never came across any study of listening in groups. And I wondered, because you said that listening makes behavior more complex. I wondered do you think it's true about groups as well, or rather it is strictly for dyads? Empirically, I'm asking empirically rather than theoretically.
You may want to look at several papers by Michelle Johnston on team listening scale, TLS. And she and her team showed in 2 or 3 papers that perceptions in teams of how good people listen to each other are correlated with performance on the at the corp as reported by the corporation of the team performance. So empirically, there is some connection. I think the scale is very good psychometrically. It has good face validity, good reliability, and also good validities. So I strongly recommend her work.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much again, everyone, and Dr. Kluger for this really wonderful, wonderful talk. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone in December with on our talk with Gerd Gigerenzer, and take care and have a good month until then. Bye-bye.
And regards to Gerd Gigerenzer for me. I've seen him maybe more than 20 years ago in Berlin.
You can also join us.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
everybody. Have
Thank
a
you very
wonderful rest of
much.
your day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.